I'm Dana, and growing up in the early 70s in Farmers Branch, my elementary school was pretty white, with a few exceptions. There was one black kid, Freeman, and then there was my brother. With his black afro and darker skin, he was considered the sort of black kid at Janie Stark Elementary, and he was nicknamed Afro-American. My brother, the brother. He didn't like feeling different, and he begged my parents to let him get his hair straightened. When they did, his straight hair fell flat. So he let the fro grow back in, but he parted it on the side the way that white boys did, and he'd comb it down, hoping that he could pull it straight. My dad was out of town a lot, and my mom is blonde and blue-eyed. So who was the milkman? Rumors abounded. Even we wondered. My parents said it must be a throwback gene. In high school, I was part of a social experiment. To end the empty bus crisis, they built a series of magnet high schools all around downtown Dallas. The theory was that they could get suburban kids to want to ride buses in order to get to one. My sophomore year, I transferred to Arts Magnet at Booker T. Washington. Now, it was there that I first met Rolanda. She was talented and smart and sassy and larger than life and outspoken, and we just connected. We would do mime projects together, and we worked really well because it wasn't about race or social class. It was about mime and collaboration. Sometimes we'd meet before school. I'd be walking down the halls, and I'd see kids greeting each other with, "Hey, nigga." How wonderful, I thought, that word that used to be so charged with hatred is now diffused to the point where people can just walk down the halls and greet each other with it. I saw Rolanda and I said, "Hey, nigga." The hall fell silent. Rolanda came over to me and she said, "I'm gonna tell you this once, because you're my friend." She pointed to a black guy and said, "He can say it." She pointed to a black girl and said, "She can say it." She looked very seriously at me and said, "You can't say it." Point taken. Now, our junior year, Rolanda and I were both accepted into the performance mime troupe. There were 10 of us, 4 girls, 6 guys. Or 4 blacks, 4 whites, 1 Hispanic, and 1 Native American. Or 2 gays, 2 bisexuals, and 6 straight. Depends on your demographic. We didn't think in demographics. We created a fabulous mime show, toured it all over Dallas, and had a blast. My junior English teacher was Mrs. Williams, who made learning fun. And one day, toward the end of the year, she said, "So what are y'all doing for Juneteenth?" Juneteenth? And hands went up all over the classroom. People were saying, "We have family over for barbecue. We shoot fireworks. We go to the parade." Only me and Lori Wigley were sitting there looking confused. Fireworks? Parade? How could we have missed this? Mrs. Williams saw that, and she said, "Do y'all know about Juneteenth?" We shook our heads, and the rest of the class laughed. She chided them. Now, they probably didn't grow up celebrating this the way that we do. And she explained to me what Juneteenth was. Now, how could I not know about Juneteenth? I had been at Arts Magnet for almost 2 years. I had seen Roots. One of my best friends was black. Still, when I looked around, it was the very first time that I noticed that Lori and I were the only two white faces in the room. I don't know when the shift happened, but I looked at my classmates and I saw Melba and Dante and Tommy, friends, not black people. Now, in my senior year, I went to a party one night and Stevie J from the dance cluster was jamming on the piano. Now, later in life, he would become a dancer, featured dancer, for a major Dallas dance company. But in that moment, he was the piano man playing Broadway musicals, and we were all singing and inventing harmonies. At some point, the rest of the crowd kind of migrated over to the back porch, and neither Stevie J or I even noticed. I said, "I didn't know you played piano." He said, "I didn't know you sang." As we bonded over music, pretty soon other energies started to run a little hot, and we ended up in a coat closet together. He pressed me up against a mink coat and planted the most deliciously soft kiss on my lips. Though it certainly sparked me, I wasn't ready to go further, and I told him so. He was a gentleman, and he honored my wishes. You see, as a small child, I was molested by a white man. At 16, I was date raped by a white teenage boy who could not hear the word no. But that night, I had my first positive sexual experience from a black man. One who curled my toes, and even though he wanted to go further, one who honored my wishes. About the time I was wrapping up high school, my brother was going to UT Austin. Now, in these days, the dorm rooms were still segregated, and even though he had checked Anglo on the application form, whoever processed him must have just looked at his class picture and roomed him with a black roommate. Neither he nor his roommate cared, but the UT staff was mortified. They said, "Oh my goodness, we will rectify this just as soon as possible. We are so sorry." After graduation, my friends and I all went our own ways, but eventually a lot of us landed in the Dallas arts scene. Rolanda and I both became teaching artists at Big Thought, and together we created and conducted several trainings around town. At one of these trainings, a teacher with a question brushed right past Rolanda and came up to me to ask the question, assuming that I was the trainer and she was my assistant. Nope. In fact, now I work for her company, Empowering Through the Arts. Yeah. Now, recently we were at a black tie event, and I was Rolanda's guest, but we came in separate cars. I arrived first in my embarrassingly bird poop-covered car, and I presented my ticket to the valet parkers. They opened the door gallantly for me, took my ticket, and parked my car. Rolanda came in her pristinely clean car, and she was told they weren't really parking for this event, and she was going to have to come move her car in about an hour. Her other guest, also a black woman, was denied parking altogether until we interceded. We went out to the valet parking guys and explained to them that we were just waiting for a friend. When we saw her make the block again, we said, "Oh my gosh, is that Ardency Martin, the filmmaker and novelist? Ardency, over here!" This time they parked her. So why was my car parked with no questions asked? White privilege. Yeah. Now, in my mid-40s, my grandmother, my dad's mother, died. And at that time, my brother and I got the answer to an age-old question. Turned out, my great-grandma Eva was actually Carolina Evangeline LaBelle, a Creole chanteuse. My grandmother, who was Austrian, had been embarrassed by this, and she'd hidden the photos. I was really relieved to hear some of the family stories come forward about how great-grandpa Napoleon and great-grandma Eva lived in poverty, but sometimes she would help supply the budget by getting singing jobs. And when she did, she was very well paid, and it meant champagne for them and steak dinner with all the trimmings for all 10 of their children, one of whom was my Grandpa Victor. It was liberating to me to finally understand. My brother got her looks, but I, in a family full of scientists and business people, somehow was into musical theater. Now I understood I got her love of singing and performing. So here's to you, Grandma Eva. But I know that even though I'm part black myself, if I see a black person in the street, I was brought up with white privilege, and I still can't say it.